You're telling me that a man that can understand the intricacies of electronics cannot turn his mind to understanding the simple matter of Mendelian genetics? I mean, you know.
I don't think there's anything simple about genetics, and I think in order to be at top of one's field, one puts their life's work into that.
Well, here's one basic fact.
But let me just finish this point. So if we're talking about Shockley then arguing against individuals who are geneticists, whose preparation, whose life work is the study of genetics, and then you're talking about someone who is essentially a transplant from one field, very different field, electronics, very different than genetics, then we're really talking apples and oranges there. And that was part of the problem with many of Shockley's positions.
Well, he's only one man.
But you touted him as being a leader in the field, so I'm just...
Well, he's one that had the courage to come forward and ask the National Academy of Sciences to actually undertake a study of race and IQ. And he was shouted down, just like Jensen has been shouted down, just like Henry Garrett, again, the chairman of the Department of Psychology at Columbia University, was shouted down. Just like every time anybody ever questions this dogma of racial equality, you know, they are totally socially ostracized in their profession and vilified and pilloried in the press.
I do not agree with that. And again, the basis of that is scholarship. If the scholarship was there that would demonstrate that indeed you could see these physical differences or you could test these physical differences, then I don't think their work would be shouted down. Those individuals' work was shouted down because, one, it was difficult in replication of those studies. Secondly, the inferences they drew from those studies are not generalizable, did not stand up to the scrutiny of individuals who, again, are learned in their own fields.
Okay.
So you tell me what the problem is.
Well, the problem is that we are a race that has put, you know, we have a man on the moon, and you have the moon walk.
Yeah, and that moon walk by Michael Jackson earned him several $100 million.
Fine.
So, you know, so there's something there. The comparison is that in the case of a Michael Jackson, in the case of African Americans within the context of this society, what has one been allowed to do for African Americans who came here in chains? If you want to understand dysfunctioning African American families in the 20th century, you have to look at the first 350 400 years of their experience in this country. If we held the same thing for your people, your group, put them in bondage, denied them education, denied them political rights, we would see the same kind of behavior exhibited by them as you see by these groups now.
Absolutely not. Professor Adams, there were, the early days of this country were called indentured servants that were white people.
Yes, they were. Okay. And they could work out of their indentured servitude. But slaves could not.
Well, the point of the matter is that you're not a slave anymore. You haven't been a slave for over 100 years.
No, but Jim Crow laws came into existence.
You keep bringing up this thing about slavery, slavery, slavery.
We still have a great deal of inequality.
That's a crutch the liberals use. It's a crutch the blacks use because you aren't willing to face up to your own basic genetic deficiencies. Now, that's a crutch. Well, I'm willing to concede that there are intelligent black people, okay? Even all the IQ studies that have ever been made, they find that there's an overlap of about 13 or 14% where the blacks can equal or exceed the average white. But the fact is about 88% of your people can't average the equal white, and 7 times as many blacks as whites are born with IQs of 70 or below, which is in a feeble-minded range. Okay?
Well, and if we control, again, as I suggested before, for social class, that you would see a tremendous difference in those scores. Yes. If you're hungry, if you're impoverished, it's very difficult for you to perform academically.
There have been studies done about the so-called Irish and the potato famine, for example, and they tried to use that, saying that, well, you know, the black woman was malnourished, and so she gave birth to a kid who was deficient in his mental abilities because of this malnourishment. And yet, when you study the Irish there that went through famines, okay, and their offspring turned out perfect as far as their IQ development goes. There was no deficiencies there. They weren't producing one retard after another like the black race is doing, okay?
Retard.
Well, retarded, feeble-minded, mentally handicapped, whatever you want to call it. The fact of the matter is you produce 7 times more of those type of people than you produce people of your intellectual ability, okay?
Given the same opportunity, we would see.
And now we have the crack babies.
Same kind
now
of
you have the crack babies. What is wrong with the black culture that you tolerate in your neighborhoods all these dope pushers?
What's wrong with your people that they launder the money, take it in their banks, and turn it over and make a profit? Questions from the audience, please.
I have a comment as far as when you just asked the question, what's wrong with the black people that we tolerate the dope in our community? Blacks do not have the financial means to even bring drugs to this country. Who's bringing it over here? It's not us. You all bring it to us and sell it to us and then get mad because you don't like what you see.
Well, don't say you. If I had my way, every dope pusher, black, white, or green, would be put up against the wall.
But you just singled out blacks.
I'm saying that you have certain role models in your society that you seem to idolize. Basketball players, football players, baseball players, and dope pushers.
I wouldn't say we idolize them.
Well, what do you mean? You had a funeral here where you had some dope pusher, I forget his name was Willie something or other, and he was buried in a coffin shaped like a Cadillac, and he was a known dope pusher, and thousands of people from the black community turned out for his funeral.
Yeah, well, we could make similar examples among...
Al Capone was idolized, too.
Thank
what
you.
he represented. And then where did we learn this from?
I don't think Al Capone was idolized. I don't know anybody in the white community that was idolized. He might have been idolized among the organized crime set, but he wasn't idolized by the rank and file people that were suffering from the things that he was doing.
But where did we learn all this from? You know, like I said, we don't have the financial means to bring drugs here. Everything that blacks learn, where do we learn it from?
You're learning it from yourselves.
No, we're not. We were suppressed, and then when we did get out there to be taught, we learned from you all.
Look, about 23% of the federal budget goes for the upkeep of blacks. We house you, we clothe you, we feed you, we educate you, we incarcerate you.
You suppressed us for many of years. Don't you think we deserve something? You took everything away from us. All you're doing is giving us just a little bit back.
Listen, we didn't take anything away from you, okay? You were born into this country now, and your parents have been born into this country, and their parents are born in. You've been citizens, you've been free for over 100 years. Now, it's time you look into your own selves why you're not making it in this country, but Orientals that come fresh off the boat, for God's sakes, go into business and are successful.
That's your definition of freedom. We're still not completely free. As long as we have people that have what we call a glass house ceiling, we are not free.
A what?
Glass house ceiling.
Glass ceiling.
Glass ceiling.
In terms of the ability for individuals to rise through corporate ranks and so forth.
I don't see, as a matter of fact, you're turning us, into the position that you claim that you're in. White people stand in line now for jobs while less qualified blacks get those jobs. White kids don't go to college while less qualified blacks do go to college.
That's a matter of choice.
Well, that's not a matter of choice. It's a matter of choice of the government, yeah.
No,
and the gutless politicians that are foisting these policies off on us.
That's a matter of choice with the individual, and the same thing happens in all nationalities. You got blacks that are not...
Affirmative action is doing nothing more than underwriting mediocrity in the workplace and in the intellectual domains of our campuses, okay? It's just underwriting mediocrity. And that's why we're falling behind the rest of the world. And our worst critics are these foreign countries here that we're competing against. Japan, for example. The Japanese Prime Minister there, he made a statement. He said, well, the reason America can't compete against Japan is because they got the blacks and the Latins that are dragging them down. And that's absolutely true.
So now you're throwing the Latins in there when... Yeah, he did say that. Now it's the Latins.
Well, yes, it is. Illegal aliens pouring across this country by the millions.
Just the black retards. I do appreciate that you conceded that a few blacks have an IQ over.
Well, I'm just quoting the facts. The studies show that
I'm glad that I didn't have to be one of those that was in the retard. But and thank you.
Well, listen, 90%.
No, now you've had 30 minutes. You've been talking like I don't know what.
Well,
and understand. I realize what. And I thank you for letting me know where Pat Buchanan got his slogan. But as soon as you said America First, I knew where he got it from. some of Pat's views, you know, understand that there are black people that are as concerned about the situations in our communities as you are. We didn't know that we were turning out 7 times as many more retards than the others. Well, we're certainly going to have to go and investigate that, you know, but we do know we got a problem. But the other thing is, you know, you said we keep throwing up this slavery bit. There were Jim Crow laws, Plessy versus Ferguson, 1896, that put us back into slavery, if you will. You know, even after Reconstruction, there are different eras in our lives. And you know, Kansas versus the Board of Education, 1954. Okay, whatever you might say, that's only 37 years ago that we have been able to have any kind of full integration, if you will, and we will accept, say, full integration in that we could go into public places, we could get education, we could ride the buses. So I'm saying that's only for, you know, that's just a little bit less than my lifetime. So there are some of us that haven't had all of the experiences. Understand this.
First of all,
we're still talking here. Now you've thrown Shockley at me and Jensen, and I read his stuff, you know, and I was taught that, you know, if a hypothesis couldn't be tested and it couldn't be replicated, that possibly it was an isolated view. So I don't think that Jensen and Shockley, you know, their views were just thrown up against the wall because they were white and it didn't go along with everything else. It was because other people who were noted top geneticists in the field said, okay, there might be some findings there, but it doesn't represent everything.
Excuse me.
So, okay, but wait a minute. Now, you have all this time. You know, give us a few. You know, I'm one retard, and here's another one. You know, you know, and to be honest with you, Mr. Jones, I like your style. You know, you've associated yourself with Louis Farrakhan. You know.
Well, I think he's a great black man. I think he is. You know,
and that's because of what he's saying. Let me ask you one last thing, and I'll turn it over to the rest of the retards and whatever. But what do you propose that you do with all these retards here? You know, we're here now. We're here trying to think of ways to try and make society better. We don't want a bunch of retards. You know, we don't want people that have a totally different vocabulary from the mainstream. We want people to be able to work together. Now, I understand you said that only the whites have brought medicine. You know, we forget about what the Indians did with quinine, you know, and saved all these people their lives, and only the whites were intellectuals. But what about the Greeks? But I know, you know, they weren't Aryan, not Teutonic.
The Greeks, they certainly were.
Oh, well, I just figured, you know, that there couldn't have been, and after all, because, you know, Socrates and Plato, I mean, they're homosexuals, so at least that's what the history says, so I figure what are you doing with it? What do you want to do with us now? You know, and you still got the Jews who's got all the money.
Well, that's a fact.
So, okay, but what do you want to do with us now? You got the retards and the Jews, which includes the Latins and the blacks, I guess, and I guess that's about it. But, well, and everybody that doesn't think, you know, that doesn't think that we're retards, so that means white folks too that don't necessarily agree with you. What do you want to do with us?
Maybe you know, I don't want this whole conversation just to center on attacking blacks. Okay,
it just seemed that way.
I'm sorry. Okay. You know, there are other issues here. I have as much loathing, even more, okay, for these gutless sellout politicians. All right. What I call the two-party, Jew-party, queer-party system we're living under, okay?
What are these things?
Two-party, Jew-party, queer-party system. Okay? They have done more to destroy this country than just about anybody, because they don't have the courage to say what is really on their minds. They put their finger in the air, and which way the so-called popular opinion wind is blowing, that's where they stand on that particular day, or that particular week, or that particular month, or that particular election campaign. They have no integrity. The reason I like Louis Farrakhan is because the man has integrity. I don't agree with everything he says, but I do respect the man because you know where he stands, and you know he says it out of conviction in his heart. And it's not just something he's saying to